the invincible predators. For many centuries, the galaxy lived in fear of one name. They were known as the predators. They were not hunters of animals. They were hunters of entire civilizations. Wherever they went, silence followed. Cities turned to ash, and the voices of whole races were erased in only a few days. The predators came from a world filled with storms and endless battles. On their home planet, only the strongest survived. From birth, they were taught one lesson: weakness is death. And so, when they built ships to cross the stars, they carried this law with them. To every planet they found, they brought war. And on every world they won. No empire had ever stopped them. No army had ever slowed them. Their weapons were made from metals unknown to other species, sharp as thought, and deadly with a single strike. Their ships moved like shadows, silent and fast. Their skin was thick, their claws stronger than steel, and their hunger endless. Civilizations begged for mercy, but mercy was not in the nature of predators. They ruled through fear. They wanted the galaxy to believe they were gods, untouchable and eternal. Every planet they conquered became another reminder: resistance was useless. The galaxy whispered stories about them. Some said the predators did not know pain. Others claimed they could not die. Children on distant worlds grew up hearing the same warning from their parents: do not anger the ones with glowing eyes, or they will come for us. The predators enjoyed these stories. Fear was their most powerful weapon. They wanted every race to tremble at the mention of their name. And for thousands of years, this plan worked. They destroyed kingdoms that had lasted 1,000 years. They erased libraries filled with wisdom. They crushed soldiers who fought bravely but were powerless against the storm. The predators believed themselves invincible. In their eyes, the galaxy belonged to them alone. On their warships, they sang songs of conquest. They told tales of easy victories, of battles that ended before they had even begun. They remembered how one world, filled with great stone cities, had fallen in a single day. Another planet, armed with massive weapons of fire, was taken in less than a week. For the predators, every fight was simple. Every war was just another meal. And then, whispers reached them of a new species, a small race, young and untested, living on a blue planet that circled an average star. To the predators, this was nothing special, just another weak species waiting to be devoured. They laughed when they first heard the name, humans. To them, it sounded soft, fragile, meaningless. Their leaders said, "This will be no different. Another world to conquer. Another people to kneel before us." The oldest predator commander spoke with pride before his soldiers. "We have crushed giants, we have broken empires. What are these humans compared to that? Nothing but prey." The soldiers roared in agreement. They sharpened their blades. They painted their armor with marks of victories past. They were eager, not fearful. To them, this was just another hunt. But not all predators were blind with arrogance. A few remembered that every story of conquest begins with the same thought: this will be easy. And sometimes that thought is the first step toward defeat. Yet their warnings were drowned in the noise of confidence. The predators believed too deeply in their own legend. On the eve of their first attack against Earth, the predator fleet stood ready. Thousands of warships waited in the dark sky above. Their commanders spoke of how quickly the battle would end. "By the time their sun rises," one said, "their planet will belong to us." Down on Earth, the humans had no idea what was coming. To them, the night was quiet, the stars distant. They did not know that from those same stars, eyes were watching. Eyes that glowed with hunger. Eyes that saw humans not as equals, not even as enemies, but as food. The predators prepared to strike. They imagined humans would fall to their knees in terror. They imagined screams, fire, and surrender. That was the way it had always been. That was the way it would be now. But the truth was about to change everything, because in their hunger, in their pride, the predators had made one mistake. They had judged humanity by the same measure as all others. They thought humans would break as easily as the rest. They thought humans would bow. They did not know yet that humans were different. They did not know yet that inside the hearts of this small, fragile species was something more dangerous than any weapon. They did not know that for the first time in their long history of conquest, they were about to meet resistance that would not end. The predators had always believed they were invincible, but soon they would learn the truth, and the galaxy would never be the same. First contact, the predator fleet moved through the silence of space like a dark storm. Their ships were massive, black as shadows, shaped like blades cutting through the stars. To the predators, this was just another hunt. Their claws itched for blood. Their fangs longed for the taste of new prey. Earth had no warning. Satellites blinked with confusion when the first predator vessels appeared. Governments argued, unsure if it was a dream, a trick, or something worse. By the time the world realized the truth, it was already too late. The first predator ship broke through the clouds above a major city. Its hull glowed with alien fire, and its shadow covered miles of land. People looked up in fear, their hearts beating like drums. The sky itself seemed to tremble. The predators did not send a message of peace. They did not ask for surrender. They descended with weapons drawn. To them, humans were not a species to talk with. They were prey, nothing more. The first attack was sudden. Buildings shook, windows exploded, and the ground burned. Streets filled with screams as humans ran in every direction. The predators watched from above, amused by the chaos. To them, fear was the sweetest beginning of any hunt. But something unexpected happened. Amid the fire and terror, humans did not all run. Soldiers, police, and even ordinary people picked up whatever weapons they had. They did not bow. They did not beg. They fought. Predators had faced resistance before, but this felt different. The humans' weapons were weaker, yes. Their bullets could not pierce predator armor. Their machines were smaller, slower, but their will was unbroken. They fought with a strange fury, a refusal to surrender. One predator warrior, taller and stronger than the rest, leapt into the streets. His claws cut through steel. His roar echoed across the city. He expected humans to scatter. Instead, a group of them stood their ground. With rifles shaking in their hands, they fired again and again until the air was filled with smoke. The predator laughed at first. Bullets bounced from his armor. He stepped forward, ready to kill. But then, one human soldier climbed onto a ruined vehicle, carrying not a gun but explosives strapped to his chest. With a cry that was half defiance, half desperation, he launched himself at the alien. The blast lit the night sky. The predator staggered, his armor cracked, his pride wounded. He had killed hundreds in his life, yet never had prey attacked him with such madness, such courage. Other predators saw this and paused. They had conquered worlds where armies surrendered before the first strike. But these humans, they were different. Across the city, similar scenes played out. A pilot refused to eject from his burning jet, and instead steered it into an enemy ship. Firefighters with nothing but water hoses and axes tried to pull civilians from collapsing towers even as alien blasts rained around them. Children huddled in shelters whispered to each other, not in silence, but with hope that their families would fight and survive. The predators began to notice something strange. Humans did not fear death in the way others did. They valued one another in ways that made them dangerous. A single human would throw away his life if it meant saving others. And that kind of courage could not be measured in weapons or armor. The predator commanders grew uneasy. They had won battles with weapons and fear, but here, fear did not work. Instead, fear turned into rage. Rage gave humans strength, and strength made them unpredictable. In orbit, predator leaders argued. They are only men and women with sticks, one commander said. They cannot last long. But another, older predator shook his head. Do not mistake them. I saw one break through fire just to strike at us. I have never seen such madness, or such power. On Earth, the battle raged for hours. Humans died by the thousands, but they took predators with them. For the first time in history, the invincible hunters began to bleed. When dawn came, the city still stood. Not whole, not untouched, but not conquered either. Smoke rose into the sky, but beneath it humans still lived, still resisted. The predators withdrew to their ships, not in retreat, but in confusion. They had expected a quick victory. Instead, they found a war. One young predator, his armor cracked, and his claws bloodied, asked his commander, "Why do they fight so hard? They are weak. They are fragile. Why do they not kneel?" The commander looked down at Earth, silent for a long time. Finally, he said, "Because they are not like the others. These humans do not fear us as prey should. They fear nothing." That night, humans buried their dead and rebuilt their walls. Soldiers swore oaths to fight again. Scientists studied alien wreckage, already thinking of ways to turn enemy technology into human weapons. Families wept, but their tears hardened into determination. And in the silence of space, the predators stared at Earth with glowing eyes, their pride shaken. For the first time in thousands of years, the hunters felt a shadow of doubt. The humans had survived their first contact, and survival was only the beginning. The turning point. The first battles left Earth scarred. Cities burned and thousands lay in ruins. Yet when the smoke cleared, something remarkable remained: human resistance. The predators expected ashes, silence, and surrender. Instead, they found a planet still alive, a people who refused to vanish. Humans buried their dead with trembling hands, but they did not break. Every grave dug became a reason to fight harder. Every destroyed building became a reminder of what they still had to protect. The predators saw this and did not understand. To them, loss always led to fear. But for humans, loss became fire. In the days after the first invasion, survivors studied the battlefield. Soldiers inspected predator weapons left behind. Engineers gathered shards of broken armor. Scientists examined the wreckage of alien machines. With each discovery, humans learned something new. One human mechanic in a ruined garage held up a shattered predator rifle. "It bleeds heat when it fires," he said, running his hand across the broken edges. "That means it can overheat." His words spread through the resistance. Soon they were building traps that forced predator weapons to jam. Elsewhere, a pilot studied the movement of predator ships. They were fast but not unbreakable. They fly in patterns, he realized. If we break the pattern, we can strike them. Within days, human jets, though slower and weaker, found ways to bring alien vessels crashing down. For the first time, the predators began to lose soldiers. It was not many at first. A few here, a handful there, but to the predators, even a single death was a shock. On every world before this one, their enemies had fallen without leaving scars. But now, on Earth, scars appeared on their bodies and their pride. The predator leaders grew restless. In their war halls aboard massive ships, arguments broke out. One commander snarled, "These humans are only animals with fire sticks. How do they strike us at all?" Another answered bitterly, "They learn, they copy. Every time we fight, they return stronger." The younger warriors were confused. "They are weak," one protested. "Why do they keep standing when they should already be broken?" The oldest predator in the room, scarred and silent, finally spoke. His voice was low but heavy. "Because they are not fighting only for themselves. They fight for each other. And that is something we never faced before." On the ground, humans pushed back harder. Guerrilla fighters struck in forests and mountains. Villages that once hid now lured predator patrols into traps. Soldiers who once fought separately began to unite across nations, forming a single front. The most shocking moment came when humans captured their first predator alive. It happened in the ruins of a collapsed city. A group of resistance fighters ambushed a wounded alien. Instead of killing him, they bound him with chains made from steel beams. The predator roared in rage, shaking the ground, but the humans held firm. Scientists and soldiers gathered around the captured warrior. For the first time, humanity could study their enemy not from wreckage but from life. They learned how his armor connected to his body. They studied how his breathing slowed in Earth's atmosphere. They discovered cracks in the armor that could be pierced if struck in the right spot. When this knowledge spread, everything changed. On the battlefield, humans now aimed for joints and weak points. Explosives were planted where armor met flesh. Even children whispered to each other in shelters, "Go for the gaps," the predators noticed. And for the first time in their long history, they felt something they had no word for: fear. One predator commander stood on a battlefield where his warriors lay dead beside humans. He stared at the broken armor, the burned ships, the defiance in the eyes of survivors. "This is not a hunt," he growled to himself. "This is a war." Humans had no illusions. They were still outmatched, still fragile compared to the towering beasts. But every small victory lit a fire across Earth. People who once trembled in the dark now whispered of hope. Soldiers who once fought alone now dreamed of a future where Earth would not only survive, but win. The galaxy watched as well. From distant stars, other races who had once surrendered to the predators began to listen to rumors. "The humans fight," they said. "The invincible are bleeding." The predators, once drunk with pride, now tasted doubt. They began to hunt more carefully, moving with unease. They doubled their weapons, tightened their ranks. But even then, the humans found cracks to strike. In one battle near a coastal city, predator forces stormed the streets. They expected victory within minutes. Instead, humans had rigged the harbor with mines. The explosion tore through alien war machines, sinking them in fire. As humans cheered, a predator captain screamed his fury to the sky. That night, under the ruined stars, humans celebrated not just survival but victory. They had faced the strongest hunters in the galaxy and forced them back. It was not the end of the war, but it was a turning point. For the first time, humanity had proven that the predators could be defeated. And for the first time, the predators knew they were not gods. They were only flesh and blood. The hunters had met prey that refused to bow, and that prey was becoming the new hunter. Humanity strikes back. The world no longer whispered in fear. The world now shouted with defiance. What began as desperate survival slowly turned into strategy. What began as scattered resistance slowly turned into unity. Humanity had changed. The predators had expected Earth to fall in days. Instead, weeks passed, then months. And each time they struck, they found humans waiting. Not hiding, not begging, but ready to fight back. Human scientists worked day and night, taking apart predator weapons and machines. From broken rifles, they built new kinds of guns. From shattered armor, they designed new shields. From captured engines, they learned how to build faster aircraft. Humanity's greatest strength was no longer only courage. It was adaptation. A turning point came during the Battle of the Highlands. Predator forces marched across a mountain valley, confident that no humans could stop them. But the humans had prepared. Hidden in caves and trenches, they waited. When the alien army entered the valley, the sky suddenly exploded. Missiles, built from predator technology but powered by human design, fell like rain. The valley turned into a storm of fire. When the smoke cleared, predator bodies lay broken across the ground. Their ships burned in the distance. For the first time in history, an entire predator battalion had been destroyed. Humans stood on the cliffs above, battered but alive, raising their fists to the sky. News of this battle spread across Earth like wildfire. Radios carried the message. Families in the ruins smiled for the first time in months. Soldiers swore they would never stop until the last predator left their skies. The predators, however, felt something they had never known before: panic. They pulled back from the valley, leaving their dead behind. In their war halls, commanders roared in rage. How can prey do this to us? How can weak creatures strike down hunters? But deep in their voices was fear. Humanity did not stop at defense. They began to strike first. Guerrilla teams slipped behind enemy lines, planting explosives in predator supply depots. Pilots launched daring raids on alien warships, crashing stolen predator craft into their fleets. Cities once thought doomed now became traps for their enemies. The most daring act came when humans used predator engines to build their own spacecraft. Crude and unstable, the ships were not meant for beauty. They were meant for war. When the first human-made spacefighter lifted off, crowds across the battered world cheered. Humanity was no longer trapped on the ground. They could meet the predators among the stars. In the first space battle, 3 human fighters faced a predator patrol. By size and strength, the humans should have lost. But they fought with reckless bravery, striking at engines, dodging blasts, sacrificing themselves to take the enemy down. When the last human fighter rammed into a predator ship, both vessels exploded. The battle ended not in defeat but in balance. The galaxy felt the tremor of change. Whispers spread across distant worlds that once bowed to the predators. The humans fight, they said. The invincible bleed. Some races began to dream of freedom. Others began to send secret signals, hoping to one day join humanity's cause. The predators tried harder to crush Earth. They sent larger fleets, more weapons, stronger warriors. But the harder they pushed, the harder humans pushed back. Every time they destroyed a city, another rose to resist. Every time they killed thousands, millions more stood in their place. Humanity was no longer prey. Humanity was no longer running. Humanity was striking back. One predator commander stood in silence after losing another battle. His armor cracked, his pride shattered. He whispered words his species had never spoken before. "We may not win." Down on Earth, leaders from every nation met in secret bunkers. For the first time in history, they forgot borders, flags, and rivalries. The world was no longer divided. Humanity had become one army, one people, one voice. A general spoke to his soldiers in a ruined city square. They thought we would fall. They thought we would kneel. But look around you, our homes still stand, our hearts still beat. We are the storm they never saw coming. The soldiers roared, their voices echoing through the broken streets. The predators began to see the truth. They had hunted too long, grown too proud, and believed too deeply in their own legend. They had thought no prey could rise against them. But now, before their glowing eyes, they faced a truth that burned like fire. The prey had teeth, and those teeth were sharp enough to tear gods down. The galaxy itself seemed to wait. Would the invincible hunters finally fall? Would the fragile humans rise as the new power among the stars? The war was not yet won, but the tide had turned. Humanity was no longer surviving. Humanity was fighting. Humanity was striking back. The fall of the invincible. The galaxy had always believed in the same story. The predators could not be defeated. For thousands of years, they were the nightmare that no one could escape. But on Earth, that story was rewritten. The hunters who had conquered world after world now found themselves bleeding, breaking, and running. Humanity, once seen as fragile prey, had risen into something new, something the predators had never faced before. The war reached its height when the predators launched their greatest assault. They gathered their largest fleet, thousands of warships darkening the stars. The commanders swore this would be the final blow. "No world has ever resisted this force," they said. "Earth will end tonight." The skies filled with fire as the alien armada descended. Cities trembled, oceans boiled, mountains shook. The earth itself seemed to cry out beneath the storm. But humanity was ready. From underground bunkers, hidden bases, and secret factories, the humans had prepared their answer. Weapons built from predator technology, powered by human genius, rose into the skies. Spacecraft designed in secret now lifted into orbit, crude but strong. Soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder, not as nations but as one world. When the first predator fleet broke through the clouds, it was met not with fear but with fire. Human ships launched into the stars, guns blazing. Missiles streaked through the dark. On the ground, massive cannons hidden in mountains roared to life, striking alien warships with blasts of light. The battle was chaos. Predator war machines crushed cities, but humans refused to stop. Families carried weapons beside soldiers. Farmers, teachers, workers, everyone became part of the fight. Humanity fought not only for survival, but for freedom. In orbit, the human fleet clashed with the predator armada. Though smaller and weaker, the humans fought with reckless bravery. One pilot, his ship on fire, rammed into a predator cruiser, tearing it apart. Another squadron lured enemy fighters into Earth's atmosphere, where human missiles were waiting. For every human ship destroyed, 2 predator vessels burned. The predators had never known such resistance. Their warriors roared in rage, but inside their pride cracked. The legend of invincibility began to fall apart. On the ground, the turning point came when humans unleashed their most daring weapon, captured predator warships, rebuilt and piloted by human crews. The very machines once used to enslave the galaxy now turned against their masters. When the first of these ships fired on the predator fleet, the aliens stared in shock. Their own power was being used against them. The galaxy, watching from afar, realized the impossible was happening. The hunters were being hunted. The battle raged for days. Smoke filled the skies. Oceans boiled with wreckage, and the earth shook with the clash of titans. But in the end, it was humanity that stood tall. The predator fleet, broken and shattered, began to retreat. Their commanders shouted for honor, for pride, for vengeance, but their warriors no longer believed. They had seen too many of their own die at the hands of prey that refused to bow. Their empire, built on fear, collapsed the moment fear stopped working. On Earth, survivors stood among ruins, bloodied but unbroken. They looked to the sky, watching as the invincible fled. The cheers that rose that day shook the ground louder than any weapon. Humanity had done the impossible. They had defeated the predators of the galaxy, but the victory was more than just survival. It was a message. To every world that had once surrendered, to every species that had once lived in fear, Earth became a beacon. The hunters are not gods, the message spread. They can bleed. They can fall. And if humans can fight them, so can we. Across the stars, chains began to break. Old empires rose again. The galaxy stirred with new hope. The predators, once feared as eternal, now hid in the dark corners of space. They were no longer hunters, but shadows of what they had been. Their songs of conquest fell silent. Their war halls stood empty. The legend of invincibility was gone forever. On Earth, the people rebuilt their cities. They buried their dead with honor, and they remembered what they had become. No longer prey, no longer weak. Humanity had proved itself the sharpest weapon in the galaxy, and as survivors stood together, one voice echoed across the ruins. The predators conquered worlds easily until they met humans. The story was complete. The hunters had fallen. The galaxy would never forget the day prey became the new predator.